Compliments of the season, and we hope you had a fabulous Christmas, which really is a great time of year, isn't it? And sometimes we wish it could last all year round. Guess what? It can. On Christmas Island, just a 3-hour flight away from Australia, the island has the picture-perfect Christmas colour palette. There's just 1,700 people on this 52 square mile island with 250 endemic species of wildlife. I'm sure this is Santa's perfect holiday spot. Welcome to Kaleidoscope, where we're getting ready to be positive, daring, different in 2024. A major thank you to our partners on the show, Srilanka Live CDB, The Daily Morning, Park Street Gourmet, Park Street Wines and Zip Zip. If you like Kaleidoscope, don't forget to subscribe, like and follow us. We are on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn.
CDB Hybrid Leasing. Enjoy exclusive interest rate and much more for hybrids, plug-in hybrids and EV vehicles.
And now for a quick look at our last program in the year on CDB Snapshot. November's overall inflation clocks in at 2.8%, an increase from October's 1%. Ireland, Luxembourg and Singapore make the list as the top 3 richest countries in 2023. Sri Lankan comedy singer Sandaru Satsara is named among the world's top 100 comedy artists. Jonathan, who lives in the Seychelles and is the world's oldest living land animal, celebrates his 191st birthday this year. A micro-sculptor used an eyelash as a paintbrush to paint the nativity scene in the eye of a needle.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Srilanka Life.
Welcome to Srilanka Life News Capsule in our last program for 2023. Sri Lanka's economy has been in a volatile space, and very much so in the recent past. With economic downturn, import restrictions, inflation and reduced consumption and so much more going on, it's probably not an understatement to say it has been a difficult year for our private sector. I had a quick chat with the chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Tuminda Hulangama, to check the pulse. How has this year been for the corporate sector, the positives and the negatives?
So I think this year was negative because of the economic downturn, the shortages, restriction on imports, increased taxation, reduced consumption by people, inflation. So all those put together, the corporate earnings of the current year will not be high. The positive side I see, that I saw, at one silver lining I saw, was that at least most Sri Lankan companies are now looking to see how they can venture out. Companies that never thought of exporting are now thinking of exporting. Companies that never thought of venturing out of Sri Lanka to do business in other countries are now thinking of going outside and doing business, because they felt that being exposed to foreign exchange crisis was the main result that we had to face. Exporting companies that look at new markets, companies that venture out are looking at venture. That's the only silver lining I see, at least as a result of the crisis.
So how do you think 2024 is going to pan out, keeping in mind impending elections, debts coming due and also a higher taxation regime?
If we don't have political consensus on the reform and the restructuring agenda we have undertaken, are the only way forward. We have found that years of living on debt and financing budget deficits through debt has been the reason why we are in this position. So my fervent request to all political parties, Ceylon Chamber Chairman, has been to come into agreement and consensus as to how they are going to resolve the problem. I can't see an alternative to what has been done now. So if everyone is aligned, I think there is no challenge.
Which industries do you think hold promise in 2024?
I think if you take shipping and logistics, to me, is an area where we have a big advantage of other countries because of the position of the country, the efficiency of the ports, the experience our people are having running ports. So, of course, it's a medium to long-term investment. So, they have an advantage, we should do well. Secondly, I think we should open up the BPO industry, IT BPO industry. because we are out of talent in Sri Lanka. And people who are migrating will not migrate if they are paid competitive salary. So the only industry that can pay a very competitive global salary are the people who are doing outsourcing work, because they are selling to local foreign market. Of course, the lowest hanging fruit is tourism. We already have infrastructure, we already have everything, the country, the beauty, the beaches, the upcountry, everything we have. And with tourism doing well, it will have a huge knock-on effect on the rest of the country and the economy. The biggest elephant in the room is the restructuring. Once the restructure is done, hopefully by first quarter next year, then we can get the airport running, the projects, the stall projects at the airport, the expressway projects, those can start again, and that can bring huge investments to the country. And the construction industry also can see a boom once again if those things take off. So I pin my hopes on the restructuring to take place very soon, and the tourism industry, shipping, logistics, and BPO are the areas that I think Sri Lanka should focus on.
In news from the Colombo Stock Exchange, by July this year, the all-share price index had moved up by 35%. However, by the end of the year, the market dropped by 10%, leading to a net gain of a more than reasonable 25%. In end 2022, oil was at $83.6 per barrel, and at end 2023, slightly lower at $81. However, there were highs of $96 in September and a low of $72 in May, June, and this month. 2024 should have an ample supply of oil due to slowing of economic activity, increasing US production recently at its highest of 13.24 million barrels per day, and Brazil, Guyana, Norway, and Canada keeping the markets flushed with sufficient oil. So unless there is a global flashpoint, oil will remain in the current $70 to $80 per barrel price range in 2024. The price of gold increased by 15% from $1,800 to $2,000 per ounce. And with ongoing wars and economic uncertainty, gold prices are tipped to remain above $2,000 per ounce in the coming year. Central Park in New York City is home to a secret order of pet owners who decorate a Christmas tree in memoriam of their pets every single year. How do you like to walk in a winter wonderland? Zlatko Salaj has been transforming his home into a mesmerizing Christmas theme park every year for the last 20 years. To say that 2023 was topsy-turvy would be an understatement. Lots have happened, but what's to be expected for a country coming out of near bankruptcy? We are going to take a short recap of 2023, the good, bad and the ugly, and also take a look at the crystal ball for 2024 with our resident public policy advocate, Rohan Pethiagoda, who we managed to catch up while he was in San Francisco in the USA. Welcome and compliments of the season. If you look back, what's the good, bad and the ugly of 2023?
On the good side, I think compared to 2022, we have a much better social, political and economic level of stability. I think the thing that characterizes 2023 as opposed to 2022 are those three features. And that's been good for all of us. It's been good for employment, for government service, for economic efficiency, and for the private sector. On the bad side, I think the problem is that the government has been behaving like a night watchman in cricket, like they're just playing not to get out. So it's been very much business as usual, inefficient, unimaginative. Just look at what happened, Savithri, to the GCE, A-level and O-level exams, delayed by more than a year. It's taken them almost 6 months just to correct the papers. This, suggests that a government has no will to get a job done. And the hundreds of thousands of students who are losing valuable years from their lives is incalculable. I mean, the damage done to these kids is crazy. And it spills over into the university admission system and the university output. So this idea that the government really doesn't have a purpose to it, that it's just messing about and lashing out in any direction, is, I think, widely now embedded in the consciousness of the country. So the new broom that Ranil Wickremesinghe was supposed to have brought in last year actually didn't materialize. It's very much been the same sort of government as we saw basically from 2005 onwards.
Well, 2024 is not going to be a cakewalk. How is the year looking?
I think we'll keep stonewalling our creditors. We owe them a lot of money, $50 billion, and we're not paying a cent. We haven't paid a cent for the last 20 months, in effect. And I think the government's been very crafty and clever about putting them off. I suspect Ranil Wickremesinghe will try to put them off until after the presidential election next year, so that we don't have to start dwindling our pittance of a foreign exchange reserve. At the same time, the Treasury is already estimating that we will have a deficit of 3 trillion rupees next year. This is crazy. And the president says that we're going to be paying about that much again in debt servicing next year. Of course, half of that goes in local debt servicing, but the rest of it he hopes to pay to our overseas creditors. I don't think that's going to happen. Central bank reserve at the moment is only $3.6 billion. It's been that much for the past several months. It doesn't look like we can build up a reserve to start servicing debt anytime soon. So we're going to continue in this bankrupt situation for at least another year by the looks of it, whatever anyone says. In an election year, I can't see the government starting to service debt. Where's the money going to come from? So next year is, I think, going to be dominated by the presidential election. The big question is whether the parties, the SJB, the UNP, the SLPP, the minority parties, whether they can all group together in some form with a coalition either with the NPP or against the NPP. And I think for the first time in presidential election history next year, we're going to see no party getting 50% of the vote and having to go and count the preference votes.
In a nutshell, what are the do's and don'ts for 2024?
I suspect on every mother's mind, the biggest do for her children is get out of the country, is emigrate. More and more people are just getting on the first plane they can, going to whichever country they can and getting themselves a job. Sadly, that is the reality. We're turning out graduates now to go and work in other countries. The cream of our intellectual capital is being whittled away to the West. I think the big don't, at least the advice that I've given myself, is don't keep your savings in the bank or in financial institutions next year, especially if that's all you've got by way of savings. It's much better to buy inflation-proof assets like land. So the big don't, I'd say, is don't keep cash around, because inflation is going to really eat into it going into 2025.
Today on Life in 60, we are in the newest book nook in Colombo on Peraharamawatha at Lakeview Inc. And I have my resident bookworm, Sam Pereira, who is here to tell you what you should be reading in 2024.
Rajan Hool and Kirupa Hool, in their wonderful book, Democracy Stillborn, talks about when it began to go wrong, from the 1920s, when Ponnambalam, Arunachalam embraced the cause of labor, going through the disenfranchisement of the estate Tamils in 1949, all the way up to 1979 and the PTA. Of course, Sri Lanka's politicians looked to repressive countries like South Africa and Jan Smuts, or even America and Jim Crow, for their role models, rather than looking at a wider picture, or even Singapore, where we could have done much better. Democracy Stillborn tells a lot of difficult truths and is one of the books that we really should read. Now, completely different from Democracy Stillborn is a book that is very light and easy to read. Life can be a frolic, and like the title implies, is quite fun. It's a collection of stories by Gulbai Gunasekara, who writes wonderfully, accessibly. All her stories are quite short, easy to read, and they have a subtle message at the end. And again, like I say, this is the perfect gift.
We are excited. 2024 is on the horizon, and see you in a brand new year.